Okay, so Aristotelian plot analysis has its limitations, but it's a decent tool for Shakespeare because we know that Shakespeare was interested in the classics and actually cribbed off a lot of stuff. But that's neither here nor there. So I'm going to go through this and kind of run you through. So at the beginning of the play, whether it's a tragedy or comedy, the status quo is here. So everything that is the way things should be, right? So society, ooh, maybe I shouldn't use a paint thing. Oof, that's really hard to read. Okay, we'll go back to like just plain old pencil. Okay, so society is as it should be, whether it's a tragedy or a comedy, right? Societal roles are all as they should be. Everyone is happy and healthy in the kingdom. I'm going to run through a tragedy first because sadly most of you have only done tragedies. And this is where Romeo and Juliet get like really weird. But we might as well use Romeo and Juliet because you're all fairly familiar with it. So here you have a society where everything is fine and then something goes wrong. This is this break here. Okay, so everything's trucking along and then oops. Like something happens to disrupt the world. And in the case of Romeo and Juliet, Romeo's running along being his own, bad self. He's falling in love with girls named Rosaline and partying all night and doing his thing. And but there is something wrong in society, okay? And in the society of it, the thing that is wrong at the beginning of the play. So the play always starts right where there's something wrong, okay? Something's wrong. Oops, this is the beginning of the play. So something's wrong, and in this case, what's wrong is that the Capulets and the Montagues hate each other, and they're fighting. And the prince... So the play actually starts with the prince saying, look, no more fighting. I'm sick and tired of you guys. And the next person, like, he just washes his hands of it. He's not going to legislate this anymore. He's just taking a step back. There's even things called a Verona exemption, where they literally are like, okay, the city of Verona is being torn apart between your two houses, and I'm not intervening anymore. That's, like, what's really wrong. Romeo comes in, though, and then you've got the rising action. And that is the same as it was when you were doing guided reading a million years ago. So rising action isn't actually a straight line. Aristotle noticed that when he was watching plays, and you've got to remember the plays that he was watching were always centered around what was called a main hero, or heroes. In the case of a comedy, it's always a couple. But he noticed that all of his plays had something in common because that's what he's looking for. He's trying to boil it down. So it doesn't matter if it's comedy, it doesn't matter if it's tragedy. Everything centers around this main person. And the main person is whoever's driving the action. So in this case, there are actually two main people driving the action. And that's where my problem with Romeo and Juliet comes in, because if you follow Romeo's line of action and Juliet's line of action, they don't fall in the same spot. And actually, I just really hate that play, because if the messenger had showed up, it would have been a happy ending. And it's, as plot devices go, it's incredibly weak. I hate it. So I'm not even going to talk about it anymore. I'm just going to talk about action and stuff. So the rising action are the things that happen to, usually the hero is the person who, so you have the first incident. Now in the case of comedy, usually it means something's wrong with the social order. So in a comedy, typically, they see someone and they fall in love with them, but society says they can't be together for some reason. Generally speaking, that's how it is. There's something wrong. So somebody's in love with the wrong person, or somebody's in love with someone who doesn't know that they're actually, a woman dressed as a man, or there's something. But it's usually about love in the romantic comedies, and there are people who have argued that Romeo and Juliet should have just been a romantic comedy. But anyway, you get, I guess I will go with Romeo. So Romeo goes to a ball, he meets Juliet, he falls in love with her instantly, and then a bunch of different things happen, and then he's in love with her, and then he kills her cousin. that is a rising action. All of these things keep happening. They go to the priest and they get married secretly and they have sex or whatever. We don't know. And, well, we know because, you know, they got married. But anyway, the nurse delivers a message. They go to the priest. Like, these things keep adding up, and it ramps up the action more and more and more. And this is where I think Romeo and Juliet fall apart in the Aristotelian sense. And Aristotle decided that the climax was where there was a realization There's a realization on the part of our main character. All right? So what that means is that something is revealed to them. So if you're following Romeo, he gets to the tomb and he sees Juliet dead. And he makes a realization that she's dead and that their plans have all fallen apart. And then he kills himself. That's his action in response to his realization. Once he makes the realization, he makes a decision. And it's the decision point that is the climax. There's a revelation or a realization. So in the case of a comedy, it's typically like if someone is dressed as a man and then they're in love with someone and then all of a sudden they reveal themselves to be a woman, or somebody realizes they're a woman, that's a revelation, or, you know, somebody comes out of hiding or whatever. And then they have to make a decision. Your hero has to make a decision. Now that's where Romeo and Juliet falls apart, because there are two heroes. Right? Because there's also Juliet. Juliet's rising action is different. She's told she has to marry somebody she doesn't want to. She meets this guy. She's warned by her nurse. Her action is completely different from his. They run two parallel actions. So when Juliet, her climax of the play is when she wakes up and she sees Romeo dead. And then she decides to kill herself. Freaking idiot. This is why I hate this play. But anyway, she decides to kill herself. She has a realization, he's dead. Oh no, I kill myself. Now, if you're following Aristotelian structure, the hero, like, they kill themselves, the story would be over, but it isn't about the hero as much. Okay, in this play, it's about society. Remember, at the beginning of Romeo and Juliet, the Capulets and the Montagues are fighting. So this decision of these two basically kids actually leads to the falling action, and that happens really fast. So I don't really enjoy this, because typically people will say that Romeo, his decision was the climax, and that Juliet's decision to kill herself was part of the falling action. Because he chose to kill himself, then she chooses to kill herself, then they're found. Then the families get together rather quickly and they resolve their differences, right? And then, and this is the fun part, it all circles back to where it should be. Society is returned to what it should be. And that, in a nutshell, is why I can't stand Romeo and Juliet. So basically, it is the triangle that you learned, right? This is also called the denouement, the unrolling. So you get a resolution down here, and then things slowly go back to normal. And this is called the denouement in French, or the unrolling, where all of these complications have gone back. And so at the end of the play, you have usually this, in a Shakespearean play, is called the epilogue. And you have them in almost every single play has an epilogue, right? So all of your plays are going to follow this kind of structure, and almost all of them are going to have the climax in Act 4. So that's just how that goes. Now, the next one, I'm going to teach you how to do your tweets, assignments, so that you get a really solid grasp of the plot of your particular play.